have all taken tough positions. How do you think the Arab League might help in bringing them back to the negotiating table?
What is expected is that they would build on the agreements that happened before, that they would sit with both sides, try to convince both sides that it is in the interests of both the Sudanese opposition and the military council, that they would reach a peaceful solution and to the issue rather than escalation. And one of the ideas is also that the Arab League and the AU would work together on bringing the Sudanese sides together, especially that Egypt is the head of the AU this year, and at the same time Egypt is the host nation of the Arab League. So both it can play a pivotal role in that through Ahmed Abul-Gheit, the Arab League Secretary General, and the AU, as well as trying, instead of going and just discussing, but bringing with it establishing a framework for negotiations, a deal that would be written by the Arab League and by the AU and proposed to the sides, and so they can both agree on it and work on it. So not just negotiations and coming back, but actually written documents that would result in a written deal that would bring a peaceful solution to the crisis in Sudan and make room for a government, a transitional government, a civil transitional government that would help in the transitional process in Sudan, and to the extent that the Arab League can host the different parties, the different Sudanese parties in Cairo at the headquarters to try to forge a deal together.
Yasser Hakim for us there in Cairo on that developing situation in Sudan. Meanwhile, the country's acting prosecutor general says toppled President Omar al-Bashir could appear in court as early as next week to face corruption charges. Al-Walid Sayed Ahmed made the announcement on Saturday, 2 months after the military overthrow and arrested al-Bashir amid mass protest against his 30-year autocratic rule. CGTN's Tulisha Balala has the story.
Omar al-Bashir ruled Sudan for 30 years. He was ousted by the military in April following months of protests against him. The former Sudanese leader could appear in court next week following charges of corruption.
During the next week, the former president will be presented before a court with the charges of possession of foreign money and suspected illicit wealth.
Bashir had already been charged in May with incitement and involvement in the killing of protesters. Prosecutors also ordered for his interrogation on suspicion of money laundering and terrorism financing. The trial referral would be made after a 1-week period for objections expires. But protesters in the country have slammed this move against Bashir. They say it is a distraction from the recent bloody crackdown on a protest camp outside the military headquarters in Khartoum. The military council, though, denies the allegations.
We are facing chaos. These days, we have lived through a crisis. This crisis happened, and we are not going to go into details, only after the investigation, not to affect its integrity.
The ruling Transitional Military Council and the opposition say they are ready to resume dialogue to resolve the current political crisis.
Sudan is now safe and stable, and we will keep going in the same direction. As the military council, we are not holding on to power. We don't want the power.
The opposition and protesters say they want power to be handed over to a civilian-led transitional body. Tuli Shabalala, CGTN.
And in Somalia, locals are coming to terms with a wave of deadly attacks that rocked Mogadishu on Saturday. Al-Shabaab set off 2 car bombs targeting Parliament and the airport in a move aimed at weakening the government's efforts of securing the city. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bello has more now from Mogadishu.
The twin blasts targeted 2 heavily fortified security checkpoints in the capital, Mogadishu. The first went off near a checkpoint near the federal parliament, just as lawmakers were holding discussions inside parliament. Minutes later, a second one detonated near a main checkpoint leading to the country's international airport.
9 people died in the blast and 25 people injured. The second blast went off at Hotel Afrique, next to a security checkpoint that leads to the airport. The suicide bomber died in that blast, but we managed to arrest a second accomplice who is nursing his injuries.
Militant group Al-Shabaab was quick to claim responsibility, insisting that it killed more than 30 security personnel manning both checkpoints. Police, however, dispute the group's claims.
Police had prior intelligence of these 2 vehicles and both were detonated before reaching their targets. The first bomber panicked after security forces opened fire to stop the vehicle, but he detonated it near a mosque. The second one also failed to breach the airport barrier.
Saturday's attacks brings to an end months long of relative stability in the capital after the government announced strict security measures, including sealing off key roads from public transport vehicles. Parliament, the international airport and the country's presidential palace are some of the heavily guarded government installations, but the militant group has repeatedly carried out deadly car explosions on these 3 facilities, further frustrating government's efforts of securing Mogadishu. On the battlefront, the country's army has made strides by dislodging the group from some of its strongholds, but this hasn't weakened the group's ability to launch deadly guerrilla attacks in Mogadishu. A similar attack last month killed 10 people, among them a former government minister. Experts now say the latest attacks call for a change in the current approach in order to avoid further bloodshed. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
The U.S., though, has praised recent military successes by Somali forces in recapturing towns once controlled by the Al-Shabaab militant group. CGTN's Abdulaziz explains again what this latest endorsement means for the country's forces.
These U.S.-trained forces have captured what was once Al-Shabaab's prized possession. For years, Barire, a strategic rural town, served as a launching pad to attack army bases belonging to Somali and African Union troops, as well as attacks in nearby Afgoye and Mogadishu. But Somali forces retook it in April, a move that has seen a sharp decline in deadly militant attacks. Senior U.S. Army officials now say the recent security operations in southern Somalia has created renewed confidence in the army and its ability to dislodge Al-Shabaab and retake new territory. Mogadishu now hopes to replicate the army's latest success in other regions of the country.
The government will ensure that every soldier being sent to the front lines has all the necessary tools and equipment. Over the course of time, we have changed our approach, and our forces are making strides against the militants. It is also evident that the enemy has noted our advances.
Last week, the top American general in Africa, Thomas Waldhauser of the U.S. Africa Command, met with senior Somali leadership, vowing U.S. continued assistance in degrading terrorist groups in Somalia. Since 2017, Washington has escalated its aerial campaign against Al-Shabaab and pro-ISIL affiliates in south-central Somalia and the Puntland region, northeast of the country. Experts now say that the latest strikes have helped weaken the group and denied it the ability to carry out brazen attacks here in Somalia.
U.S. government has been looking at the Somalia problems through the counter-terrorism lenses. And now it seems that they are looking at more of a peace building, where the AFRICOM officials have clearly said they are only pressuring Al-Shabaab in order the government to get any space for political dialogue.
Earlier this year, a U.S. airstrike killed more than 50 militants near the port city of Kismayo after an attack on an army base in Sanguni village, the deadliest attack against the group so far this year. Analysts say an increase in ground and air offensive will be crucial in the coming months as the army begins retaking forward operating bases from the African Union force AMISOM, who have been operating in the country for over a decade now. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
On May the 7th, the United Nations General Assembly elected Tunisia as a non-permanent member of the Security Council for the period 2020 to 2021. The country's foreign minister declared that Tunisia will be the first defender of Arab and African positions submitted to the Security Council. In addition, Tunisia will work in collaboration with member countries to avoid the outbreak of conflicts and to resolve them peacefully. CGTN's Adnan Chauchi is in the capital, Tunis, and filed this report.
Foreign Minister Ahmed Jenawi announced the priorities set out in Tunisia's action program during its term as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council for the period 2020-2021, and this in collaboration with UN member countries, including those represented within the Council.
There are many reasons for unrest and war in the region. Tunisia will work within the UN Security Council and rely on its good ties with the 5 permanent member states and 10 elected members to ease tension and to be the voice of wisdom to prevent the escalation of regional crises.
The head of the Tunisian diplomacy added that Tunisia will defend the interests of Africa and Arab countries during its 2-year term.
Tunisia will be the Security Council, the voice of Africa, the voice of the Arab world, and will endeavor to build bridges between different stakeholders to maturize peaceful political solutions to all international conflicts.
Jenawi called for peaceful settlements in Syria, Yemen and Libya. Algerian Foreign Minister Sabri Boukaddoum emphasized during the meeting with his Tunisian and Egyptian counterparts earlier this week Tunisia's role in resolving the Libya crisis within the UN Security Council.
We are confident that Tunisia's election in the Security Council with a record vote will instill the goal of resolving the Libyan crisis and the crisis in our region in general, and establishing peace and prosperity.
Tunisia's foreign minister said the North African state will work to further stimulate efforts to combat terrorism and extremism and to encourage peacekeeping operations.
President Beji Sibsi noted that Tunisia's election to the Security Council reflects the confidence that the country enjoys in the international community. The head of state added that it was the result of ongoing consultations and significant efforts by Tunisian diplomacy. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. South Africa's ANC pays tribute to students who stood up against apartheid. And African experts conclude research on Burkina Faso's natural assets.
Economic data out of the country.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Penina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
The World Health Organization says the current Ebola outbreak is not a health emergency of international concern, despite spreading to Uganda. The international body, however, requires more funding to fight the epidemic. Here's Leon Senyange with our report.
The World Health Organization says the lack of funding will slow existing efforts in combating the current Ebola epidemic in the DRC. Over $148 million is needed to support the response efforts. Only $43.6 million has so far been received by the health organization. The WHO is hoping that governments and other international organizations will fill the funding gap. On Friday, the WHO decided not to declare an international emergency over Congo's Ebola outbreak, despite its spread to Uganda. 2 people who had crossed into western Uganda early this week died of the disease. Uganda has since heightened its response. The country's health minister also advised the public to avoid handshakes until the scourge is contained. The current Ebola epidemic began in August last year in eastern DRC. It has killed over 1,400 people. Leon Sanyanga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
To South Africa now, where the country's governing African National Congress has held a unique exhibition to pay tribute and honor the students who stood up against the apartheid regime back in 1976. The exhibition forms the part of the Youth Day commemorations, which aims to educate the youth about the apartheid struggle. The 16th of June is celebrated as the National Youth Day in South Africa. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more.
National Youth Day is significant in South Africa. It recognizes the bravery of the youth of 1976 who took on the apartheid government in rejection of the inferior education that was afforded only to black citizens. Thousands of them fought the battle that changed the course of South African justice and human rights. They took to the streets in order to advance the goals of the broader struggle for liberation and democracy in this country. On June 16, 1976, more than 20,000 pupils from Soweto began a protest march in the wake of clashes with the police and the violence that ensued. During the next few weeks, hundreds of young people were killed and property destroyed.
In 1976, young people actually stood up and they fought against an apartheid which actually infringed on their rights. And we feel like today is actually a very important day for young people to come in here and get inspired and remember why they need to stand up and fight for what they believe in.
The exhibition includes this iconic picture. It's a picture of Hector Peterson. He became the iconic image of the 1976 Soweto uprising in apartheid South Africa when a newspaper photograph by Sam Zima of the dying Hector being carried by a fellow student was published around the world.
Just by being here in this space, I could see, I could sense a lot of suffering that our forefathers went through. It's such an honor for me to be here, actually. I'm very, 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 I don't know how to put it. I can't even put it in words because just by entering this place, I was so shattered that I'm actually fortunate today. I can have the space that I'm engaging in. I can actually interact with anyone. They never had this opportunity that we have. So I'm going to make the most of it and show them that we're actually grateful.
The exhibition provides an opportunity for South Africans to take stock of the strides that the country has made in addressing issues facing the youth.
This period, South Africa, we have many young people that are unemployed. We have many young people that do not have parents. We have many young people that dropped out of school. We have many young people with degrees, and some of the degrees that we've been encouraging them to study, but they are sitting at home. As a young person, if the country says there must be industrialization in South Africa, you must think of how that must be done. This is the time for young people to look for their identity.
The Youth Month also serves as a time to reflect on the progress made and address the challenges identified in order to drive the youth development agenda in South Africa. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And moving on to Burkina Faso, where African experts from the UNESCO have concluded their examination on the country's cultural and natural assets that could be inscribed on UNESCO's World Heritage List. CGTN's Amy Makona has more.
The experts conducted research on Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou, looking to add the country's natural and cultural sites on UNESCO's World Heritage List.
Key actions include working to reconcile heritage conservation and sustainable development, building stakeholder capacity for efficient management of African and world heritage, and increasing the visibility of African sites on the World Heritage List.
Africa boasts at least 600 cultural and natural sites. However, to inscribe a natural asset on the World Heritage List, it must have outstanding universal value, coupled with a recognized scientific and artistic value.
We are very lucky because in Africa, the cultural aspects are really high profile. But unfortunately, what we do not have in Africa is the financial means to ensure the safeguarding of these areas. That causes some difficulties for us. Otherwise, in terms of beauty, landscape and innovation, we have many sites that meet these criteria.
Nous avons beaucoup de sites qui correspondent à ces critères-là.
Burkina propose un site, un dossier.
Burkina Faso proposes a report called the Sites of Ancient Iron Metallurgy. Under UNESCO's provisions, we have the possibility of inscribing a single site that is very large or of combining several sites into a single serial inscription. What we are proposing is a serial inscription because the sites are scattered in 5 regions, including the North Central, Northern, Upper Basins and Central Plateau. Collectively, these sites form an undeniable strength that deserves to be inscribed on the World Heritage List.
The Ouagadougou meeting comes amid preparations for the 43rd session of the World Heritage Committee to be held from the 30th of June to the 10th of July in Baku, Azerbaijan. Amy McConaughey, CGTN.
Meanwhile, a 3-day exhibition on environmental technologies and renewable energies has concluded in Tunisia's capital, Tunis. The event aims to raise awareness among all stakeholders of the importance of preserving the environment, producing renewable energy and solving the problems of waste management. CGTN's Adnan Chauchi has more.
The 6th edition of the International Exhibition of Environmental Technologies and Renewable Energies, Envirotech and Energy Expo 2019 opened at the Tunisian Confederation of Industry, Trade and Handicrafts headquarters in Tunis.
Tunisia has the expertise in the field of environmental technologies and renewable energies. This fair is a platform for the leading enterprises and research institutes to work together on developing new technologies.
Over 40 companies and startups operating in the fields of waste collection and recovery, water treatment, renewable energy technologies and green employment took part in the event. The company Belfair sells lift bins, made in Tunisia.
I have designed modern bins which collect huge quantities of waste. It changes the perception, attitude and behavior of citizens towards waste management, which is a priority in any city.
The objective of this exhibition is to present new strategic orientations in the field of sustainability and competitiveness for a grain industry and ecological construction.
We sell bricks of compressed soil without cement. One can save up to 90% of cement and build a house without a concrete carrier. The building can support an earthquake measuring 7 degrees on the Richter scale. It's an eco and heat-proof construction.
Scientific conferences and workshops on several themes, including the circular economy and waste recovery and effective environmental technologies and solutions, were organized on the occasion of the fair.
During the International Environmental Technology Exhibition, 18 candidates have obtained a certification of conformity as part of the National Certification Program, focusing on renewable energies and energy efficiency. Authorities say this is an acknowledgement of staff competence, particularly photovoltaic installers. Adnan Chauchi, CGTN, Tunis.
The United Nations and South Sudan's government say 6.9 million people face a critical lack of food in the country. Representing 61% of the population, it is the highest number of people facing food shortages in the country's history. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports from Juba.
The United Nations says there is persistent economic instability and 6 years of civil war is to blame for the acute food shortage. It went on to say the population displacement from the war contributed to disruption of people's livelihoods. Many farmers here haven't had time to till the land. A peace deal signed by President Salva Kiir and opposition groups last September has brought relative peace in the country. However, rains have been delayed, denying many here the opportunity to cultivate their land, and there are also issues among farmers themselves.
This extreme food insecurity situation is driven by inter-communal conflict and cattle raiding.
The United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization says it's working to help farmers.
We're trying to procure food and seeds within South Sudan, because with $1 you have double impact. You see, you can buy from the South Sudanese farmers, and after you distribute to other South Sudanese in need.
The World Food Programme says it plans to provide up to 5.4 million people with a variety of support, including life-saving food. It also says it will carry out cash distribution in areas with working markets. Food would be provided for the population in return for work on the construction and rehabilitation of community assets such as roads and schools. But the aid agencies say in order to provide assistance to the needy population, there has to be peace in the country. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Further afield, the 11th Straits Forum has just opened in the southeastern Chinese city of Xiamen. It has gathered officials, experts and young entrepreneurs from both sides of the Taiwanese Straits. Facilitating young people from Taiwan to work on the Chinese mainland has been one of the priorities. Here's CGTN's Li Xianhua with more.
Joining hands, young entrepreneurs from Taiwan seeking to expand their presence on the Chinese mainland. Preferential policies are being offered to them in various fields, including education, entrepreneurship, and job seeking. Case in point is Lin Zonglong, who came to the mainland in 2007 and started his own business in 2016.
During my father's generation, the biggest preferential policy was tax cuts, but now there are more. As long as you are really working here and paying the tax, you get allowances for housing, startup capital, and office facilities.
And this year, more than 10,000 people from Taiwan are here in the hope of finding more job opportunities.
The Straits Forum was initiated by the people at grassroots level with the feature of inclusiveness. It has been very popular among people on both sides of the Taiwan Straits. The forum is irreplaceable, and it also serves to facilitate the exchanges and deep cooperation between people from both sides of the Straits.
The theme of this year's event centers on expanding exchanges and deepening integration and development. This falls in line with a speech given by General Secretary Xi Jinping in January on the 40th anniversary of the mainland's message to compatriots in Taiwan, which called for national reunification and more all-round exchanges.
Many Taiwan compatriots weathering all difficulties come to the mainland to pursue their dreams. With the participation of Taiwan compatriots, the force to achieve China's national rejuvenation will be stronger, which will be beneficial to the Taiwan compatriots, giving them more room to develop, and Taiwan compatriots will enjoy higher status on the international stage.
The trade volume between the mainland and Taiwan hit $200 billion in 2018, and about 500,000 people from Taiwan were working on the Chinese mainland last year. An increasing number of young people from Taiwan are crossing the streets and settling down here in Xiamen, where preferential policies are provided. Despite the challenges they have to deal with, including a different legal system and a different work environment, they are seeking to succeed on the Chinese mainland. And the annual Straits Forum is offering them an opportunity to connect with others from all around China. Li Jianhua, CGTN, Xiamen.
And your business news coming up next. Here's what's ahead. Nigeria Reserve Bank suspends accounts suspected of ties in smuggling. An NGO sues South African government over coal and industrial air pollution.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt,
along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Nigeria's central bank has blocked several accounts it suspects were being used to fund the smuggling of textile, rice and palm oil. Nigeria's government recently banned imports of those items in order to give room to stimulate local production and limit the outflow of hard currency. Such protectionist stances are nothing new in Africa's biggest economy, but just how sustainable are they? CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam filed this report.
Lovett Samuel is a textile dealer in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. She's been in the business for the past 4 years, splitting the profits to support her family and reinvesting the rest to grow her business. But she's worried the ban on textile imports could put her out of business and hurt her family. Many traders like her support the idea of protecting local industries, but they question the capacity of existing industries to meet market expectations in terms of quality and quantity. Nigeria's textile industry collapsed in early 2000, and by some estimates, some $1.4 billion will be required to revive it.
Even if they want to do it, they should, let's say, start, not to stop all of them, not to bring. They should just establish it first and see what they're doing before they stop. Not they will just stop it at once. No, it will not help us. Another what they will do, they will just start and let's see their own, and they will not stop the people that are bringing it in. No. What they will do to establish it and bring it, they should do so that we see the quality and how their own is before they stop it. Then if we see that yes, we can do it, then they can stop other people.
Even as the government was busy rallying against rice imports, the country spent $160 million on rice imports alone in 2018. The central bank sees such expenditure as wastage of scarce forex. Instead, it's providing more than $100 million as cheap loans to rice farmers to produce rice locally. It has pledged to provide similar schemes for palm oil farmers. The Central Bank of Nigeria says the blocked accounts are being investigated for dumping and economic sabotage. Those found guilty would be banned from owning bank accounts in Nigeria. Kelechi Mekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Now, gridlock, traffic congestion, pollution. These are just some of the transportation challenges that have caused a headache for policymakers and ordinary citizens like you and I, especially in industrial cities. In one of Africa's mega cities, though, there are efforts to change that through an app. The app is called Lara, and it is helping millions of commuters in Lagos get from point A to B, as CGTN's Deji Badmos now explains.
It's been hailed as an app that is helping to solve some of the transportation challenges in Lagos in a very unique way. For the millions of residents who use the city's public transportation system, Lara, as the app is called, is helping them to navigate the city knowing exactly how much the fare is. It's the creation of 3 young men who say their initial motivation was to help solve a noticeable transportation challenge in Lagos.
It's a chatbot that's built to help people with the local public transit directions. At its core, the company's mission here is to build solutions that help people plan, commute, and connect better on their trips. And Lara, it's just a chatbot that shows a whole lot to effective what she does.
Google Maps is it's mainly focused on giving people driving directions around the city. In other more developed cities, they have public transit directions as well as fare codes. But in developing cities like ours, where that information is not available, that's where we come in, and that's the distinguishing factor for us. So we are able to provide public transportation modes from, shuttle buses, downfall, to, Okadas, which are bikes, bike taxis, ferries, and everything. So we provide all that public transit information and also include fare codes and time estimates.
Building the database needed to drive the chatbot was not an easy task and took some time to get the needed information to feed into the app.
A lot of manual on-ground work actually has to go into place, and as you already said, using local local knowledge as well to hyper-local knowledge is one very key resource. But I think another key resource as well is having the skill set to know how to acquire this data and also to maintain this data.
Lara.ng works just like popular messaging apps WhatsApp and WeChat. The difference is that rather than exchange messages person to person, you would be doing so with Lara, the chatbot, which is basically an AI. Once logged onto Lara.ng, the process is quite simple. Just enter your start location and destination, and Lara would work out the navigational guide providing different transport options, the fare, and the estimated time of travel. It's just as simple as that. Lara now covers 3 cities in Nigeria and 2 outside the country. Over 10,000 people now visit Lara.ng every day. But Samuel and his co-founders are aiming higher.
We have talked to people that have said this is a problem in Brazil, this is a problem in Thailand, this is a problem in many other continents around the world. So yes, we are starting in Africa because that's what we know best and because that's what we're most passionate about, but we have aspirations to go elsewhere as well.
The first time I came to this city, in order to move from one point to another, I had to ask for directions a lot, even from strangers. And to be candid, that can be discomforting. But first-timers don't really need to bother themselves about that anymore. All you just need to do is simply ask Lara. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
In South Africa, the government is being taken to court for continued air pollution in the Highveld priority area. This part of the country is home to coal-fired power plants, mines and large industries, all of which are pretty big polluters. The landmark case has been filed in a Pretoria High Court and is seen as an important test of South Africa's constitution. CGTN Sumitra Naidu brings us up to speed.
Groundwork and Vukani Environmental Justice Movement in Action are taking government to court over the Air Quality Act. According to the Act, the government has a responsibility to reduce air pollution in order to limit the impact of emissions on the environment and people.
So this case has come about essentially because of the deadly levels of air pollution in the Highveld area and the fact that people living and working in this area are not breathing in air that is not harmful to their health and well-being. And one of our human rights in our constitution is section 24A of the constitution, which says that everyone has a right to an environment that is not harmful to their health and well-being.
The environmental groups have identified Eskom and Sasol as the main culprits, emitting tons of emissions daily. But they believe the real blame lies with the government for allowing it.
So for every day that the situation continues, we believe it's a direct violation of the section 24A right, and that the government has both a power and a duty in this situation to take the necessary measures to reduce the air pollution, enforce the plans and various pieces of legislation that apply in order to reduce the air pollution and make sure that there's no longer a breach of this section 24A right.
The landmark case is an important test of the Constitution and could set an important precedent.
So it is going to be a landmark decision for the environment, and that will help us since South Africa is moving a part of their 5 agenda is there is bioeconomy, and bioeconomy is not just about having economy based on natural resources, but how you reuse your system and how you use them in a more sustainable way. We cannot look at sustainability just in terms of economic empowerment or economic prosperity. We have to also look at for the future generation how we effectively and efficiently use the natural resources for development.
If this application is successful, it will mean a rigorous enforcement and more work for industry, which could result in lower profits. But more importantly, it will mean cleaner air for those most affected. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. Zimbabweans living with disabilities take to horse riding as therapy.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
In Zimbabwe, equine-assisted therapy, which involves horse riding, is becoming a popular tool in helping people with disabilities. CGTN's Farai Mwakutuya has more.
Friday is Sharon Marufu's favorite day of the week. For 20 minutes, she gets to ride a horse, an experience that makes her more animated and which has resulted in marked progress.
Sharon's condition has improved. She can now sit up on her own. She can kneel and can roll from one place to another.
The 9-year-old, diagnosed with cerebral palsy, has been riding at the Healing with Horses facility in Harare, the second equine therapy center in the country. The first, in Bulawayo, which caters for some 150 children, is the only professional therapeutic horsemanship center in Africa.
The children don't actually know that their muscles are working as they're on the horses, because it's a forward and up and down and sideways movement. So whilst they're sitting or even just lying on a horse, those muscles are gently being used.
Riding is also good for the mind. Daryl Nyashanu has expanded his cognitive abilities.
The time that he'll be doing his horse riding, going right round the facility, he'll be actually pointing out yellow when he sees different leaves, yellow, green, and that's part of his development as well. He's turning 12, but his developmental age is around between 18 months and 24 months. Yeah, so it's really been going great. He loves coming here.
Who wouldn't, with such dedicated companions?
Nikki is a former top show jumping pony who's now retired fully into therapy. She's created a bond with these children whom she seems to know require tender, loving care.
Though less glamorous than being paraded in the winner's circle, the rides Trish is giving here are providing immeasurable, health-improving gratification. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Let's now take a look at your sports news. Here's what's coming up. Top athletes prepare for the African leg of the prestigious IAAF Diamond League circuit in Rabat, Morocco.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
South African World 800 meters champion Caster Semenya has turned down a late invitation to compete at the IAAF Diamond League meeting in Rabat, Morocco. Organizers extended a late invitation to Semenya, having initially opted to sideline the South African from the competition in light of her protracted battle with the World Athletics governing body over gender rules. CGTN Sadiq Shaban is in Morocco and tells us more.
The organizers of the African leg of the IAAF Diamond League meeting in Morocco were left exposed and ridiculed for declining to extend an invitation to South African 800 meters champion Caster Semenya. In a dramatic turn of events, the Moroccan Athletics Association and the meet organizers were compelled to change their mind late on Friday night, opting to send an invitation to the Olympic champion.
We invited Caster
it's a difficult situation, I mean, worldwide, concerning her, concerning the DSD situation, and that's something that it's not under our control. But it's, we invited her, and was probably too short or whatever. It was a sports reason that we received from her management.
However, the African champion has received support from fellow South African Luvo Manyonga.
On Sunday, I'll be jumping for her because she's going so much, and I want to make sure that I raise South African flag, and I also want to give love to her wherever she is. If she don't come, it doesn't matter. We're still here as a country.
Sunday's race has some of the best runners in the world seeking to extend their winning streaks and improving their performance going into the World Championship.
It's my first time in Rabat, so that's always exciting because it's new, so I like that. And yeah, I'm very happy and I'm feeling good and the progress is coming, so I'm glad to be here.
I'm not that in good shape right now because I just start my train later. I just gonna have fun. I don't mind what kind of races. I think I'm gonna enjoy it.
A quality field has been assembled for the fifth leg of the IAAF Diamond League meeting here in Rabat on Sunday. But Caster Semenya will not be among them. The South African World and Olympic 800 meters champion saying the invitation came a little bit too late. Sadiq Shaban, CGTN in Rabat, Morocco.
To football now, and Senegalese President Macky Sall has handed over the national flag to the Lions of Teranga, who are currently finalizing their preparations for the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt. The official presentation kicked off Senegal's official march to Egypt for next week's tournament. CGTN's Mohamed Abubakar has more.
With the attendance of several administrative and sporting authorities, the Senegal's Lions received the national flag from the President Macky Sall. Before officially handing over the national colours to the team captain, the head of state urged the Lions to perform to the best of their ability and bring the cup back to the Senegalese people.
It is on you that our hopes will rest. When you go out on the field, remember the national motto: one people, one goal, one faith. Play for the people, score as many goals as possible, and above all, have faith in yourself. They say that with faith you can lift mountains. In that case, with faith you can certainly lift a cup. You'll have to fight like real lions. On the field, don't be Teranga lions, but hunting lions. Leave the Teranga to us and bring us the trophy.
Senegal is highly anticipated at this AFCON. To galvanize them, the president even changed his speech this time. When you listen to his speech, you realize that he pushes them to surpass themselves. When you are the top African football nation, it means you are well armed, and I think they don't have to worry because they have all the assets to win this AFCON.
With 16 points, Senegal finished first in Group A, ahead of Madagascar, Equatorial Guinea and Sudan during the qualifying phases of the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations. On behalf of the whole team, Captain Cheikhou Kouyaté pledged to play hard and go as far as possible in this continental competition.
We are aware that we are on a work mission, and we will go there to honor the Senegalese jersey. We will do whatever it takes to win the cup. We've already started working, and we are pursuing this work in Spain so that we enter this competition in full force.
We know that the whole country supports us, and we are ready to do a lot for our country. We are living with a winner mindset, and we are convinced that we can bring something back to Senegal. We will do our best to win this cup.
The Lions will travel to Spain, where preparations will continue before making their way to Egypt for the competition. Their first game for this 32nd edition of the Africa Cup of Nations is scheduled for June 23rd against Tanzania. Mohamed Abubakar, CGTN.
The Kenya national team Harambee Stars played out a 1-1 draw with the Democratic Republic of Congo in their final pre-AFCON friendly match played in Madrid on Saturday. Michael Olunga put Kenya on the front foot in the 25th minute from a swift counter-attack that had seen Ayub Timbe do the spade work on the left flank. Stars would have gone behind at the start of the second half when Cedric Bukambu stepped up to take a penalty he had been awarded after Patrick Matasi brought him down in the box. Matasi then stepped up to save the spot kick, keeping Kenya in the match. In the 86th minute, DRC's Arthur Masuaku's low effort from a free kick slipped through Patrick Matasi's fingertips and into the net. Both sides would then fail to find a winner, the match ending 1-1.
It was really interesting today. But when you play as a strong team, you forget one detail, you think it's finished, it's never finished. Because at the end they can win maybe, if it's 2 minutes more, you know. It will be terrible because I think we were during 80% of the time above the opponent. But if you forget one detail sometimes, if you don't respect the football kills you and you receive a punishment.
If you can't win, you don't have to lose. So I'm satisfied because we score and we make a draw, but we have to change something.
And in the women's football, let's shift to the FIFA Women's World Cup in France, where Cameroon have now registered 2